Purpose Summit 2023 attendees, please welcome back to the stage Davin Salvagno.
Woo! All right. Let's take our seats. I love that you guys are engaging each other in the spirit of engage, inspire, impact. Tonight is, we tend to take tonight and make it a primer to kind of set the stage of your heart and your mind and where you're going to be at. And I want to share, as you guys are sitting down, before I introduce our next and final speaker for tonight, before you guys all go off and do stuff with each other tonight. Last year we were in this room and we invited Garry Ridge to come speak at the Purpose Summit. And Gary's become a really, really close friend of mine over the last year. He's been an incredible influence, mentor, coach in my life over this past year. And he actually stayed the whole week. By the way, one of the aspects of this summit that you will see is that almost all of our speakers are here for all 3 days. So you can engage them after their talks and say hello to them, like Simon Bailey, who's sitting in the front row and is opening tomorrow morning. But you can engage them and you can pick their minds because, again, more than anything that happens on the stage, what's important is what happens off the stage and then when you leave here today. But I want to share with you an impact piece. Last year, Garry stayed the entire week, and we went to dinner the last night of the summit. And he said, you know, Davin, that was an amazing conference. I've been to hundreds of conferences over the last 25 years as, CEO and chairman of WD-40, and I never quite experienced something like this. And at the end of the summit, I had said something like, it was so good. Next year, we're going to bring 6,000 people back to Notre Dame, and we're going to put them over in the ice arena. And he said, I cringed when you said that, because what made it so special was I was able to run into the same faces over and over and over again over 3 days. And there was an impact that happened that I wasn't able to experience at other conferences. And there was a lot of wisdom in that. So we intentionally kept the intimacy of this to what it is. So you guys are a part of something that is truly special. So thank you for taking advantage of the engaged time. With that said, it is my pleasure to introduce my good friend, the culture coach and chairman emeritus of the WD-40 company, Garry Ridge.
Thank you, brother. Well, I was listening to our speakers before, and it reminded me of a T-shirt that I have at home. And the T-shirt says, "Made in Australia, all genuine parts." So I can't get up here and tell you that I've actually physically ever broken anything that I can remember. But what I did take from what they were saying is how there are events in your life that really do change what you do, which reminded me of my story that I am going to start with. And I want to take you back to the year of 1999. I became CEO of WD-40 Company in 1997. I'd moved to the US in 1994, so I disrupted myself and my family and moved 8,000 miles across the world. And I was in an aeroplane, a Qantas 747, and I was flying from Los Angeles to Sydney. And it was 38,000 38,000 feet high into the sky. And it was about 2 a.m. in the morning. And I had that little light on, that comes down that allows you to read. And I don't think there was another light on in that upper deck cabin. And I was reading some articles, and as you know, if you travel a lot, you accumulate a lot of stuff that you want to read, and you put it in a folder, and you write on it, says reading, and you take it on airplanes with you, and you tear it up. As you read it, put it in the sick bag. That's what I used to do with it. And I read two things, and I'm going to share these with you because it was the pivoting point in me thinking about how could we lead our company at WD-40 Company. And the first thing that I read was something from the Dalai Lama. Now, I'm not necessarily religious. I'm probably a little spiritual. My wife would say, particularly when it comes to tequila, but I don't like tequila. And I read this, it says, our purpose in life is to make people happy. If you can't make them happy, at least don't hurt them. And the second thing I read was something from Aristotle that I'll share in a moment that I shared last year. And it said, pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. And I thought to myself, if we could create an atmosphere where people really enjoyed what they were doing, and if we could send them home happy at the end of the day, would we make a difference in the world? And I thought, wow, I wonder if we could do that. Short story, I went back to school. I did a master's degree in leadership at the University of San Diego. I met my mentor. Someone talked about having a mentor before. I met my mentor, Ken Blanchard, Dr. Ken Blanchard, the guru of servant leadership. And I was able to take some of that learning and go and execute it because I was given the opportunity and I actually had the authority in some ways to do it at WD-40 Company. And today, that company continues to thrive on. But I want to talk a little bit about a role you all have. And isn't it wonderful that we're at this fabulous stadium? I was looking outside there, and there's this great field. 80,000 people are filling that stadium to start a football match. But what would happen if someone forgot to bring the goalposts? And what would happen if the timekeepers forgot to turn up? And what would happen if the coaches didn't turn up on the sideline? But the team ran onto the field, and the people in the bleachers were waiting for the game to commence. But for however long takes for that game to happen, all they did was these players ran around the field. They didn't know how to score, they had no feedback on their game, and they didn't know when the game was over. So what were they at the end of all that? Tired, frustrated, angry, and unaccomplished. So that's why the title of what I want to share with you today is the difference between a manager and a coach's purpose. Pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. Aristotle said that. He was born in 384 BC. Unfortunately, so many of us are bad learners. During COVID, we talked about the Great Resignation. I wrote about what I called the Great Escape. And why I'm talking about that today is that we all have a job to do. And it's become very clear to me that this job is so important if we're going to continue to build and grow cultures in organizations. Because back in the middle of COVID, people were not resigning. They were escaping from toxic cultures. They said, I'm not putting up with this anymore. My life has been turned upside down, and you want me to go into wherever I have to go to work and take a fatal beating every day from Al, the soul-sucking leader? I'm not going to do it. I'm going to escape. And the thing that's really concerning me is we're struggling with that right now because we're struggling to get people back into a work environment. Now, we did learn that there's a couple of days a week you probably don't need to go to the office. Why would you want to drive to the office to sit in front of a computer screen? But there are days in the week when we have to be connected because connection is what's important to us as human beings. And why aren't people going back to offices? Because they're saying, I'm not going back to that toxic culture where I got beat up every day and I wasn't treated with respect and dignity. I'd prefer to stay home. I kind of like it here. The thing that's sad about that is when people get put in solitary confinement in jail for punishment, a lot of them want to end up killing themselves. So we have a job to do. And what I want to share with you today is what we can do as great coaches to make this work. The first thing we want to do is we want to change what we call things. Words really, really do matter. So let's take the word manager and throw it out. Why don't we talk about a coach or a mentor or a leader? Let's take the word policies and kick policies out the door, and why don't we call them guidelines? We don't want a policy people. We want to give them guidelines that help them play better. And let's forget about rules, and let's have values in an organization that not only protect people, but set them free. I love thinking about coaches, and I love this this statement by Adam Grant. It's easy to be a critic or a cheerleader. It's harder to be a coach. A critic sees your weaknesses and attacks your worst self. A leader sees your strengths and celebrates your best self. A coach sees your potential and helps you become a better version of yourself. So every one of us, when we go into our place of businesses every day, have a responsibility. And our responsibility is to help people step into the best version of their personal self. So what's the role of the coach? Define what win looks like. What's an A look like? What values do we play by? What are the rules of the game? And continually help the players play their best game. So there's a coaching contract, and it's simple like this. A great coach is committed to helping a player get an A. A great coach knows the game and what it takes to win. A great coach does not run onto the field and take the ball. A great coach does not. I've never seen any football game in any code where the coach, coming into the final minutes of the game, has run onto the field, taken the ball, and tried to kick the ball. A great coach spends time on the sideline observing the play. Why? Because they're there to help the player win. He adds value to the players with feedback on how to improve their game, and never, ever goes to the podium to pick up the prize. Now, you might see them near the podium getting a whole bucket of ice water chucked over them, that's okay. But they never go to the podium to pick up the prize. And they spend much time in the locker room. What happens in the locker room? That's where you build trust, where you build that team spirit. If you are being coached, you agree that you know what an A looks like. You agree that sometimes you're going to, and most times you're going to accept feedback. And maybe even occasionally those 80,000 people who are sitting in the bleachers may want to give you some feedback on how you're playing. We've all seen the people shouting from the bleachers, and maybe we're going to ask them that. But in a toxic workplace, the talent goes in, and without coaching, what happens on the other side is turnover. They go for the great escape. Unfortunately, the great escape is sometimes worth leaping out of a building. So our job, as we go back to rebuild the organizations that we need to do, is to ensure that we don't let the cultures that we've built drain away. We have to be brave enough as leaders to take connection as our purpose as we bring people back together. Culture is not an initiative. Culture is an enabler of all initiatives. Now, as you know, some of you know, I grew up in Sydney, Australia. I went to Des Moines Boys High School. Now, Des Moines Boys High School did not look much like Notre Dame. This was my science building. It looks more like a prison camp, I thought. But my science teacher one day gave me a petri dish. And the science teacher says, what we're going to do is we're going to grow culture in this petri dish. And I thought, that sounds interesting. True story. So the first thing is, what are the ingredients you need to put in the petri dish to grow a great culture in an organization? So as a coach, what do you need to grow a great culture? So firstly, you need to have a people-first mindset. Coaches, not managers. We are there, as Bob Chapman, who is the CEO of Barry Weinmiller, says, everybody who comes to work every day is someone's precious child. Well, they're not only someone's precious child, they're someone's precious husband, wife, auntie, uncle, cousin, whatever. So we have to have a people-first mindset. We're there to help them win. We have to have a clearly defined and authentic purpose. Davin was kind enough to mention the company that I spent 25 years as CEO at, WD-40 Company. And as you know, our purpose, the reason we get up every day, is to create positive, lasting memories. We exist to create positive, lasting memories, solving problems in factories, homes, and workshops around the world. As I travel around, when I was in my role, I'd sit on an aeroplane and someone would say, "What business are you in?" I'd say, "I'm in the memories business." They say, "You work for Disney?" I said, No, I work for WD-40. They said, "I remember when." So do you have a clearly defined purpose? And I thought it was beautiful the way Davin linked the purpose to the outcome. As he was right. If our purpose of creating positive, lasting memories didn't run through the brand, the people, and the product, how would you keep it all together? So do you have a clearly defined purpose? You have to have a hierarchical set of values. What is that? Why do they have to be hierarchical? Because you don't want people to cherry pick the value depending on the circumstance. I'll tell a story about that later. You have to have a transparent and simple vision. So many people think they're so smart, they have to camouflage issues with confusion. So people think they're smarter than they really are. Let's make it simple. What's our simple vision? We have to have learning moments that reduce fear. We have to have belonging, acceptance, connectedness. We have to make sure people feel secure, they're supported, they're inclusive, and they have identity. And we have to think about care, candor, accountability, and responsibility. So culture equals, parentheses, values plus behavior times consistency. And this is the other thing my science teacher taught me. They said, not only do you have to make sure that you have to have the right ingredients going into that Petri dish, you have to consistently watch the Petri dish. And you have to love your people enough to not only reward them and applaud them for doing great work, but you have to be brave enough to treat the toxins as they enter that Petri dish, because they will send that Petri dish sour so quickly. So culture happens when there's a clear set of behaviors, there's loving and bold behaviors that are done consistently. A lot of people think this culture thing is, it's soft, it's easy. It's not soft and easy. It's simple, not easy. I'm really excited right now. As part of the work I'm doing, I'm writing my new book. Now, as you would expect, it's got a funny title because I like funny titles and simple words. But my new book is called Any Dumbass Can Do It. And the reason it's called Any Dumbass is you're looking at the dumbass. And I'm going to go out, once the book is launched, I'm going to do the dumbass tour and talk about all the learnings of 25 years of being a dumbass. So if we think about the model that we need for when we build a great organization, people first, purpose second, passion third, products fourth. People is our tribal culture. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Purpose is our why. Values are our freedom or our rules. And then we have this thing that I call the typhoon zone. This is where most organizations get caught up, and I call it the typhoon zone because it's really, really messy. If as leaders we spend a disproportionate amount of our time on strategy and execution versus building the strong culture around people, purpose, and values, we will continually play the finite game, and we will not have a high level of execution, or what we call will of the people. Because you can have the best damn strategy in the world. Write yourself a strategic plan. Take it over to some smart professor down here in the business school, down here at Notre Dame. Hey, professor, what do you think about my strategic plan? Nice strategic plan. 70 out of 100 for that damn strategic plan. It's a beauty. But if only 20% of your people go to work every day and are passionate about executing against that plan because they know they belong and they feel they matter, 20 times 70 is 1,400. But if 80% of your people go to work each day knowing they're making a contribution to something bigger than themselves, knowing that they matter, knowing that they belong, are protected and set free by a compelling set of values, learn something new and go home happy, 80 times 70 is 5,600. It's that damn simple. Any dumbass can do it. We talk about the learning moment, how much you learn. You learn a small amount from theory, a little more from practice, but you learn most things from mistakes, or what I call the learning moment. And why did we call it the learning moment? It's because one of the most disabling emotions we have is fear. Think about that deer standing in the middle of the road, watching a car coming to it with headlights. Get off the road, deer, get off the road. It's fearful, it's frozen, bang, hit by the car. So why in organizations do we create an atmosphere where people are fearful about really sharing what is the catalyst of success, which is learning? So we need to reduce fear. We don't make mistakes, we have learning moments. And the definition of a learning moment is a positive or negative outcome of any situation that is openly and freely shared with all people. So when you go back to your organizations, let's take the word failure out. Let's become learning moment organizations. And, you know, this is some work that Amy Edmondson did, and it's very clear that in an organization that has psychological safety has a reduction in fear. Uncertainty. Uncertainty is a really tough thing. I love this quote about uncertainty. It was from Dr. Rebecca Homkes, who was a strategic advisor that we used at the company for many years, and I now are associated with her in other companies. And she says, it's a series of future events that may or may not occur. And during COVID, that was so true. So why am I showing you this Qantas aeroplane again? Because I thought about uncertainty a lot, and as a coach, and I thought about, what about, and I like airplanes because I've got about 7 million miles on American Airlines, and I spent a lot of time in airplanes. I'm really happy they fly, and that they've been good to me, so that's why I like it. And it's a Qantas plane, so it's from Australia. So if we think about an organisation like an airplane, the first thing we have is the plane itself. So we have to make sure the plane is in good condition, it's well serviced, the wheels, landing gear will come down, the flaps will move, engines are good. So if we're really putting a great strategic plan together, our job as leaders is to make sure the plane is ready to fly. And then what do we know about our strategic plan? We have a starting point and a place to go. So we're going to start here and we're going to go there. Everything's great. What do we need now? The plane can't get off the ground without a crew. So isn't it our job to have the best crew we can possibly have? So our job as the coach, the captain, is to make sure we've got the best crew. Now, there are two things that we are told when we go into the flight planning department or area as a flight planner. And that's, what is the weather like on the way? And what's clear is we can identify whether we had headwinds or tailwinds. So as you know, as you've all flown businesses, sometimes we have headwinds, sometimes we have tailwinds. If we have headwinds, it takes us a little bit longer to get there, we use a little bit more fuel. Crew works, they feel okay, they get off the plane, everything's okay. If we have tailwinds, we get there a little bit quicker. We use a little less fuel. The crew's a little less tired because they aren't on the plane for so long, they feel happy. And then we get turbulence along the way. And what we've just been through is a bunch of turbulence because, as you know, as the captain's giving you his briefing before takeoff, he says, welcome aboard Qantas Flight 11 from Los Angeles to Sydney. We're expecting a reasonably calm flight tonight. We have the seatbelt sign on, but I will take the seatbelt sign off, but we suggest you keep it on flight because we may hit some unexpected turbulence. So in COVID, what happened? We hit this turbulence. It was wild, it was rough, it was unstable, it was a roller coaster, it was unsettled, and my gosh, it was chaotic. So not only did we have the headwind, but we had this turbulence. The crew had to work much harder. They were more tired when they got to the end. They were damn well exhausted. But if we as coaches along the way were continually helping them to play their best game, and we were sharing with them that this turbulence is only here for a short period of time. We may hit a little bit more. And the turbulence is still out there. So as we go back to our organizations, it's time for us to make sure we do what we can to settle things down. Accountability is so important. I love this definition. It's doing what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, to the standard you're supposed to do it to. And that's from our dear friend, Dr. Amber, who was here at Notre Dame. And most people, as coaches, explain what they're supposed to do and when they're supposed to do it. But have we been clear about what the A looks like to the standard we're supposed to do it, so that we can reward and applaud people for getting that A? Because in the book that I wrote with Ken Blanchard, we say, we're not here to mark your paper, we're here to help you get an A, helping people win at work. Values. I love the fact that values are so embedded in WD-40 Company. I've often said that anybody at WD-40 can make any decision they want as long as they use their values, and they're hierarchical. Let me give you an example of how that can work. We have a mandatory, I keep saying we, I guess I can I still say we? Is that okay? I got some is that okay? I'm still a shareholder, I can still say we, right? I'm chairman emeritus. I have this great job now, it's called chairman emeritus. It means I have no accountability, no responsibility, but I can go to any party I like. What a job. Pretty cool, huh? Doesn't pay very well, but still, that's okay. So let me give you an example of how hierarchical values work. We have a mandatory at WD-40 Company that says we will have no cancer-causing chemicals in anything we sell. Why? Because we don't think it's doing the right thing, and certainly it doesn't create positive, lasting memories in anybody's relationships. So how does that empower people? How do we empower people through our values? So you could be someone working in our supply chain that's responsible for sourcing chemicals. And someone could come along to you one day and say, you're a public company, got some great news for you. I can save you $4 million. We've got this chemical, we've tested it against the one that you use. In fact, there are a couple of attributes that we believe it may even perform an itchy-bitsy little bit better than the one you have. And we've done some research, calculated some data, and we believe that if you replace chemical A that you're using with this chemical, you can save yourself $4 million a year, straight to the bottom line. Yippee! Aren't you excited? And the person in supply chain said, oh, really? Tell me more. Well, there's only one thing you have to do. Just put a little warning on the back of the can. This product contains a chemical known in the state of California to maybe cause cancer. It's a Prop 65 warning. The person in said, thank you very much. Appreciate you thinking about us. We're not going to do that. But it's $4 million. You're a public company. Yeah, but we have values. Our number one value is we value doing the right thing. Our number two value is we value creating positive, lasting memories in all of our relationships. And number six value is we value sustaining the WD-40 economy, which is about profitability. But you see, it comes at number six, not at number one or two. But no thanks, we're not going to do that. Look, you haven't got this straight here. $4 million, shareholders be happy. I want to go talk to your supervisor. You can talk to the supervisor, you can go talk to the president of the Americas, if you want to go talk to the CEO, the chairman of the company, or even the chairman emeritus, who has no authority or responsibility, but he will go to your party at Christmas time. You're going to get exactly the same answer. It's not within our values. How do you think that empowers the person in the organization? They know how to make decisions because you have a hierarchical set of values that allows, that not only protects them, but sets them free. So people like us do things like this. So if you don't have a set of hierarchical values in your organization, and if those values are not clearly described, there's a challenge for you as a coach. That's the time to look at it. Values, to me, are like putting the feed for a flock of sheep in the center of the paddock. Here's a paddock. In the center is the values. The red on the outside are hungry wolves. If we didn't have those values in the center that were drawing people to the behaviors that we wanted, some of those little sheep might wander around on the side and get underneath that fence and the hungry wolf would eat them. We've seen that happen in companies across the US many times. So there are four pillars. The pillar of care. We love and care about our people enough not only to reward them and applaud them for doing great work, but to also redirect them. And my friend Ron, who wrote one of the best books I've ever read, which is To Be Honest, and is here tonight, and he was here last year. And last year before I went to walk on the stage, he says, "Don't suck." So what a mate. Today I'm sitting over there next to my wife. He comes up and whispers in my ear, "Don't suck this year either." But he made this comment: people sometimes protect their own comfort zone at the expense of other people's development. And I learnt that lesson so hard. There are a number of times as I led during WD4 that I was protecting my own comfort zone at the expense of other people's development, until one day I had an aha moment and it became clear to me. The more I love the people I work with, the more important it is for me to not protect my comfort zone and be brave enough to do that redirecting. Because if I don't, I'm not being a good coach. I'm letting them play to lose instead of helping them to play to win. So don't protect your own comfort zone at the expense of someone else's development. Candor, no lying, no faking, no hiding. I believe most people do not lie. In organizations, I believe they fake and hide. Why do they fake and hide? Because they're scared. Why are they scared? Because Al, the soul-sucking CEO, leads by fear. So reduce fear. Don't create an atmosphere where people want to lie and fake and hide. Accountability. Are we clear about what an A looks like when it walks in the room? What do you expect from your people? And more importantly, what should they expect from you as a coach? Because it's a two-way street. And then finally, responsibility. We developed something really magical at WD-40 Company. It's called the Maniac Pledge. If you were here last year, you might have heard me talk about it, but I love it. And what it is, it's the pledge of permission. It's the pledge of do away with the na, the finger pointing. I love it. Here it is. I am responsible for taking action, asking questions, getting answers, and making decisions. I won't wait for someone to tell me. If I need to know, I'm responsible for taking actions, for asking. I have no right to be offended that I didn't get this sooner. If I'm doing something others should know about, I am responsible for telling them. The pledge of responsibility. We take that pledge and we live by it. Many times, as when I had the privilege to lead this wonderful group of people, someone would come into me, or I'd run into them, someone that said, "Maniac Pledge." They'd ask me a question. Now, maybe I didn't always have the answer, but I certainly respected that they answered the question. And then the other thing is about tribes. One of the greatest desires we have as human beings is to belong. Every one of you that is in this room today has left a party, an event, thankfully not my presentation so far, an organization, or even a relationship because you didn't feel like you belonged. Why do people leave organizations? Because they don't feel like they belong. Now, there was some reference to Maslow's hierarchy before. Okay, when we were talking about that earlier, I thought, okay, I got the slide. But what this really says is most organizations provide the first two levels. What they don't provide is love and belonging. So again, people want to know they matter and want to know they belong. And we call ourselves tribes. And as I was studying tribal behaviour many years ago, I looked at the tribal behaviour of the Indigenous Australians and the Fijian Islanders. And I thought about that in the role of a coach. And if we were to take that trip back to Australia, it wouldn't be on the Qantas 747 because we'd have to go back thousands of years. And if we were observing a group of Indigenous Australians at a tribal meeting, what would the tribal leader be doing? He'd be being a great coach. He'd be teaching the younger tribe members to throw a boomerang. Why? Because the boomerang was the tool of survival. So what's the number one responsibility of a tribal leader and a coach? To be a learner and a teacher. It's so simple. We learn, we teach. As we teach, we then equip those that we have the privilege to lead to step into the best version of their personal self. Values. I've talked about values, but I have to add this little bit too because I'm a great fan of the Godfather movie. In fact, I may have said this last year, but just as COVID was starting in Italy, we were in Italy and I was on my way to Corleone in Sicily because I just had to go to where the mafia started. Not because I think mafia is good. But why I'm bringing that up is, if you've watched Godfather 1, you know they have values. Now, we may not necessarily align with the Godfather's values, but there's one thing that was absolutely clear: there was consequences if you didn't live up to the values. Belonging, future focus. One of the things I was most proud of at WD-40 Company as we entered the COVID learning experience was a few years earlier, we'd been brave enough to identify the fact that the buying habits of our end users, consumers, was probably being changed by their ability to go to their computer, press a button, and have a truck deliver something. So we invested several millions of dollars before COVID in identifying how we could turn up our learning, how we would learn more about being better at e-commerce. Thank goodness we took that future focus, because when COVID hit, many channels of distribution collapsed. We were able to continue to get our product to our end users, who were now having what we called isolation renovation. They had nothing to do other than to fix things at home. So their need for our product to create them positive, lasting memories went up, and they could get it delivered on an Amazon truck or any one of them. So we had that. Specialized skills. When I was given the privilege to lead WD-40 Company 25 years ago, we had no scientists. We had no identified quality global team. What we realized is there were specialized skills within the organization that we had to build up. So over the years, we continued to build the strength of the specialized skills that we needed. So our job as coaches and leaders is to identify where those specialized skills are and make sure that whatever organization we're in, we're respecting that. We're warriors. Of course we're warriors. We're there to live what we called our just cause, which is a group of people who come together to protect and feed each other. That's why we got up every day. And celebration. By God, we could celebrate. We celebrated in good times, and we celebrated in not so good times. But what was the celebration? The celebration was we were one together. In fact, in the middle of COVID, we took a employee opinion check-in survey, and we got the answer to one question that I didn't believe, and 98% of our people said, we are excited about our place in the company's future. Now, this is January 2021. And 98% of our people globally, right, in 17 countries around the world said, we're excited about our place in the company's future. What have they been smoking? Maybe we're going to die. So we went back and asked the question, why? And you know what they said? We feel safe. I was privileged enough in the last month or so to do a tour of Europe to every one of our WD-40 offices in Europe. And I hadn't seen many of them for a long time. And now, I don't really matter anymore. Garry who? And as I visited and spoke to them, without question, so many of them came up and said, thank you for keeping us safe through COVID. That's what kept us going. I was worried about my mother-in-law being ill. I was worried about other people. I wasn't worrying about us because we knew that we were safe together. There is no other place I wanted to be than here right now. That's because we as coaches were giving them what they want. And here's an interesting statistic. In our employee opinion feedback, 97% of our people globally say they respect their coach. Most people leave organizations because they hate this person, their boss. Al, the soul-sucking CEO. Or it could be Alice. I don't want to be gender specific here. Now, I brought Al with me last year, but I didn't bring him in person this year. He has undesirable habits that I don't really want to be around. I have to keep him in a plastic bag. He smells. But I just wanted to remind you of some of the habits that Al has that as a coach you don't want to have. Al believes his ego eats his empathy instead of his empathy eating his ego. To Al, it's all about me, me, me. Al thinks micromanagement is essential. He's the first coach to run on the field and want to kick that ball. Al thinks they're corporate royalty. Not only do they want to run on the field, but they want to sit in the prestige box and have their cocktails delivered to them. They may even have a private parking spot somewhere or another in a very large office. Al loves a fear-based culture. Al is the master of control and the know-it-all. Al has all the answers, even the wrong ones. And when they're the wrong ones, guess what? They're not his answers, they were yours. Al thinks learning is for losers because Al knows everything. Al must always be right. Al hates feedback, and Al is not dependable at all. At all. Never keeps his word, or Alice. Now, I'm sure some of you have met an Al somewhere, or an Alice somewhere along the way. Hopefully you're not in that organisation. I must tell you that at some time in my career, I had a little bit of Al in me. And it wasn't until I put the mirror up in front of my face and said, who's the person I really want to be? And it wasn't Al, because I learnt from Ken Blanchard that saying you're a servant leader is a good start, but it's your behaviour that makes it real for people. So what are some of the behaviours that you should consider to be a great coach? Number one, leaders, great coaches involve and love their people. Now, don't get all tied up about this word love. You do love your people, because without them, you won't be successful, because you can't do it. You're a dumbass, just like me. Leaders are always in the servant leadership mode. We're there to serve our people. Leaders are expected to be competent. Leaders are connected with emotional intelligence. It's the leaders that you'll find in the cafeteria or asking just a simple question. Are you okay? What's on your mind? Are you okay? What's on your mind? Leaders love learning moments. My gosh, the more you have in life, the better your life becomes, because a learning moment is the spark, the catalyst, the igniter of innovation, of entrepreneurialism. Leaders have a heart of gold and a backbone of steel. Leadership is about a balance between being tough-minded and tender-hearted. It's not for the faint at heart, I tell you, because we have to make decisions. But if we make them based on the values that are important to us, with justice and truth, and tell the people not only what we're doing, but why we're doing it with transparency, they'll be better accepted. Leaders are champions of hope. Leaders know micromanagement is not scalable. Leaders do what they say they're going to do. Whoops. And leaders learn to use them. And leaders treasure the gift of feedback. So if you're going to be a great coach, and you need to be, especially now as we go back into our organisations, it's time to put the connection together again. Don't let the loud few stop you from doing what's right. And that's to bring our people back together, to connect them. Fill in the blank. Someone's running out of the door to the office in the morning. They give their husband, wife, or significant other and high five and say, I'm so excited to go to my office today or to my place of employment because fill in the blank. It's up to you to fill in that blank. But one of the things you would fill in that blank is because when I go there, the people I'm with are there to help me step into the best version of my personal self. I can't wait to sit with my coach because all they care about is helping me win. I can't wait to sit with my mentor. I can't wait because, as someone said, Davin said, someone spoke to me and I feel like I was actually important. They asked me how I was I doing, and what was on my mind. They know, I know how important it is to feel like I belong, and I know I matter. I'm not just that individual walking in, and I want to go back there. So many people who are not going back to offices today are not where they go for work, are not going back because they don't want to go back for another fatal beating. I don't blame them. So now's the time to change that and start afresh. We talked about change earlier. Chuck it out, start afresh. So Low will of the people, good strategy, result. High will of the people, great strategy, great result. Purpose-driven, passionate people guided by their values create amazing outcomes. How can the dumbass say that? Because we proved it. At WD-40 Company, over 25 years, we had a compounded annual growth rate of total shareholder return of 14% a year. We took our market cap from 300 million to 2.6 billion. We expanded to 176 countries around the world. We about 6x'd our revenue. But you know the nicest number of every number? 93% of our people were engaged, and 98% of our people said, I love to tell people I work at WD-40 Company. Why would they want to say that? We just sold oil in a can. No, we didn't. We help people create positive, lasting memories. Business must be a force for good. If we can send people home happy, happy people will create happy communities. Happy communities will create a happy world. And by golly, we need a happy world. And we can all do something about it. We, in our own little way, can start the revolution of the happiest world there can be if we just think about our job, our role as a coach. Our role as in life is to help people be their best. My favorite quote, and I know Lisa loves this, she keeps telling me, the marvelous Lisa, it's always impossible, it always seems impossible until it's done. So I'm right on time, Davin. 0-0. Thank you very much.
The incredible Garry Ridge. So just before we depart for the evening, and then I'll kick it over to Davin for what's left. In the spirit of true takeaways, Garry, a few come to mind. Based on your upcoming book, which I cannot wait to read, you've provided a life-changing transformation. I used to not want to be a dumbass, and now I can't wait. Thank you. Thank you. The second, your learning moments. You, my friend, are the epitome of a lifelong learner. You are the epitome of having a humble beginner's mindset. And I know that it comes from your heart. So a lesson for all of us that the curiosity of a guy like Garry, curiosity can often lead us to purpose. With that, Davin, what's coming up?
Awesome. Well, we are excited for what's ahead for tonight. Have a great time. Make memories, build relationships, and we will see you tomorrow morning. Doors open at 8 o'clock back in this building at 9 a.m. for Simon T. Bailey.